provide me with as much information as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steinhardt. Mr. Coble, gentleman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Reno, it's good to have you here. Ms. Reno, let me think aloud with you for a minute or two and propound a series of statements and/or questions to you, then I'll be glad to hear from you. On February 28, it appears that the element of surprise had been compromised, perhaps even emasculated, and I'm wondering why at that time the raid was not aborted and delayed until a subsequent time. Number two, many complaints have been voiced because the invasion of the compound occurred too soon. You yourself, I think, in your testimony said, why now? Why not wait? Let me put another spin on it, Ms. Reno, and ask if anyone considered conversely accelerating the operation. I'm thinking now fiscally, and I realize it's very delicate because you have innocent people inside that compound, but I know the daily cost was enormous. I am told in excess of $1 million, and after the fact, the result may have been even better to have done that. Admittedly, Ms. Reno, every one of us at this panel up here is applying 20/20 hindsight today, and that's far easier, I will stipulate, than what confronted these agents when they were in the trenches. But having said all that, it appears probably about every person who touched the ball presumably fumbled it at one time or another. Again, that's easy for us to say today. But I don't want these hearings to conclude, Mr. Chairman, without at least mentioning, and this has been said before, I think the most crucial fumble of all must be charged against David Koresh. After all, it was he who started this in motion. He cannot, in my opinion, be exonerated and should not be exonerated, which leads me to this question, Ms. Reno. I guess when you're dealing with what appeared to be a prominent presence of emotional and or mental instability inside the walls of that compound, at that point, perhaps a higher degree of care should have been imposed, and I'm curious to know if you believe that was done. I don't believe it has been asked yet at this stage of the hearing whether or not, Ms. Reno, you and or Director Sessions ever went to Waco. I'd be curious to know about that, and if you did not, I'd like to know why not.
With respect to you...
Let me ask one more, a couple more, Ms. Reno. If I were drafting a plan for subsequent use, hopefully we'll never have Waco 2, but if I were drafting a plan to be used, I believe I would insert therein provisions for a more thorough, continuous briefing for the President. It appears, and I may be wrong, but it appears that the President was in the anteroom rather than at the head of the table. And I'm thinking he's a former governor, he was a chief executive at Arkansas, who knows, he may have had a similar encounter while there. I'm wondering if that was ever discussed. And finally, in response, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Fish, asked you, Ms. Reno, concerning psychological warfare. And I think it's clear that that was a key component in Waco. And I'm curious to know if you approved of the use of psychological warfare against the Branch Davidian compound. I apologize, Ms. Reno, for hitting in rapid-fire succession, but these are questions that have plagued me almost since the outset. And if you can respond in the time that's left, I will be appreciative.
First of all, your first question, as I understand it, is why, after it appeared that the ATF assault had been compromised, was it not delayed? And I would have to refer you to the ATF for that. That is in another department.
That's fine.
Secondly, you made reference to a complaint, the complaints that we went in too soon. Again, I've spelled out why we took the time we did to try to exhaust negotiation techniques and to do everything we could to to try to resolve it peacefully. We did not go in the sense of an armed assault. We went in by trying to increase the pressure through the use of gas. Your third question was, on the other side of the coin, why didn't we physically assault the place at the beginning? Based on the firepower that was in that building, I did not think, based on what the Bureau told me, and it was certainly their conclusion, that they could assault that place physically while at the same time ensuring the safety of the agents involved and ensuring the safety of the innocent children inside. Third, your fourth question is, you made a reference to a higher degree of care.
I was going to say, when you're dealing with emotional and mental instability, maybe, some people are prone to say, well, my gosh, they're just a bunch of nuts and let's go ahead and take over. I think maybe we ought to do it in a more delicate, careful manner. Say, listen, we've got a problem in here. We're not quite sure what the response is going to be. Do you think that at that point they said, let's be especially more careful? That was my question.
I think the FBI approached it with the greatest care imaginable. On February 28th, they went in to Waco, but they didn't go into that compound. They didn't assault it. They very carefully started talking to people. As you hear from them today, they will tell you who they talked to, the care they went to, everything they did to try to effect in the most thoughtful manner possible a proper resolution of it. You ask why I don't know whether Director Sessions went to Waco, but whether I went to Waco, I did not go to Waco. I'm not an expert in hostage negotiation. I'm the person where the buck stops. I'm not an expert in terms of law enforcement tactics. And the Bureau frankly told me, when we get into a tactical situation, that's our job, and I acknowledge that. But at the same time, the buck stops with me in terms of the review of, if they had said, well, we're going to go do something crazy, I would have said, no, you're not. If they had said, we're going to do something that didn't make any sense, I would ask them questions until it made sense. But as I asked question after question of the Bureau, their responses made sense. And nothing that I was going to learn on the ground at Waco that I didn't see from picture after picture, from reviewing the models of the compound, from understanding everything, from understanding where every water tank was, the bunkers were, where the armament was expected to be. It was not a decision made overnight. The first time this question of using the gas came up was during the week of April the 5th. There was meeting after meeting in terms of reviewing it, asking the questions, saying, go get more information, go do this, check this out, let us talk with the Delta Force people, what about the water tanks, question after question. Whether, if upon our investigation, if upon the recommendation of all involved, all of us who want to make sure that this tragedy or a tragedy like this does not recur again, they say we can do something with greater care, I'm going to be the first to try to do it. But I do know that extraordinary care, extraordinary deliberation went into this.
Ms. Reno, I think if the chairman is uneasy about a red light, I'll be glad to hear from you, but I suspect, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield whatever you say on that.
Have you completed your...
Well,
he's got two more questions.
Ms. Reno, would you approve of the plan that I drafted to bring the president from the anteroom to the head of the table if he, in fact, was in the anteroom? It appeared that he was not continuously brought up to speed on this, and I'm not saying this critically, but that seems to be my gut feeling.
I guess it's the difference between President Roosevelt and General Marshall and General Eisenhower and General Bradley. And I think that President Clinton did exactly what President Roosevelt did during World War II, and I was in kind of the position of General Marshall. And he got briefed, and he took responsibility, and he's been supportive, and it was my decision, and I take responsibility.
So I don't think you would sign off on my plan for Waco too, and I say that with tongue.
I would not sign off on your plan to send the President of the United States into all the details that have to be made, because as I was making decisions there, I was also dealing with Los Angeles and making other decisions, and there are an awful lot of issues that have to be dealt with in the country. But the President has been supportive of me. He was informed. He was concerned because he had a situation in Arkansas, and he had considerable thought, and he had the right questions.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the additional time. Ms. Reno, I thank you for your response.
Thank you very much.